Some parents are willing to do whatever it takes to protect their kids, even if it means ending up behind bars. From the man who beat his daughter's attacker to death, to the woman who brought a gun to court, let's start with Gary Plauché. In March 1984, Gary Plauché's face was all over the news. He had committed an unspeakable crime on live TV. Gary Plauché and his estranged wife decided to sign their son Jody up for karate lessons. After the decision was made, the 10-year-old boy was enrolled into a program that was run by 25-year-old Jeffrey Doucet. For about a year, Jody took lessons from Doucet. What his parents didn't know was that he was being abused by the man they had trusted to be his karate instructor. On Valentine's Day in 1984, Jeffrey Doucet kidnapped Jody and took him all the way to a motel in Anaheim, California. It's unclear how long the young boy was held captive in the motel room, but during that time, he was abused by Doucet. A nationwide search for Jody ensued, and he was finally found when his captor let him place a collect call to his mother. Doucet was taken into custody by the California police, and Jody was reunited with his family in Louisiana. But the story is far from over. A little over 2 weeks after his arrest, Doucet was flown back to Louisiana to face trial. A journalist who knew the exact time Doucet would be arriving at the airport shared this information with Jody's father. When the day came, Jody's father put on a baseball cap and some sunglasses and made his way to the airport. And no, he wasn't going to throw a Doucet a coming home party. As soon as he got the chance, Plauché shot his son's abuser at point-blank range in front of all the television cameras. Doucet died from the gunshot wound, and Plauché was sentenced to 7 years suspended sentence, with 5 years probation and 300 hours of community service. Paramjit Singh. When news of this man's actions became public, it led to a worldwide debate. Paramjit Singh came face to face with his worst nightmare when a 17-year-old teenager assaulted his 1-year-old daughter. The case was brought before the police, but Singh was determined to get justice his way. Singh and the teenager went to court for a hearing, and when it was over, Singh offered the teenager a ride home on his motorbike. Was it wise to accept rides from a man whose daughter you have been accused of assaulting? If your answer is no, it doesn't matter, because that's exactly what this teenager did. As if that wasn't suspicious enough, he also accepted a cold drink from Singh that was, of course, laced with an intoxicant. Next, Singh drove the young boy to a secluded area, tied him to a tree, and then chopped off his hands. Shortly after carrying out his master plan, Singh was arrested. While some believe Singh went too far, others think the teenager got what he deserved. Marianne Bachmeier. In March 1981, Marianne Bachmeier went into a crowded courtroom armed with a .22 Beretta pistol. So, how exactly did she get into such a precarious position? Marianne Bachmeier had a pretty tough life. By the age of 18, she had given up 2 children for adoption and was all alone. At age 23, Bachmeier got pregnant again, and this time she decided to keep the baby. Bachmeier and her daughter Anna were what you would call best friends, but tragedy struck when Anna was only 7 years old. The two got into an argument, and Anna decided to skip school and hang out with her friend instead. On the way there, she met 35-year-old butcher Klaus Grabowski, who didn't offer her sweets like his counterparts. Instead, he invited her over to play with his cats. This ended in tragedy with Anna dead. When his fiancée returned, the police was quickly alerted and he was taken into custody. But you see, the problem was that Grabowski was not a first-time offender. He had assaulted and murdered children before and had gotten away with a slap on the wrist after consenting to chemical castration. This time around, Bachmeier was determined to make sure Grabowski didn't get away with it. And so, while seated behind him in court, she pulled out her pistol and fired 8 times. The bereaved mother was arrested and ultimately received a 6-year sentence for manslaughter. Juan José Fernández. Like many unfortunate events featuring evil predators, this one begins with Enrique Sanchez offering 4-year-old Ana candy if she'd agreed to go with him to a nearby gas station. Sanchez was Ana's mother's first cousin, and like every other 4-year-old in the world, Ana loved candy, so she agreed. The trouble started when Sanchez took her to an abandoned land on the outskirts of town to do unspeakable acts, but the little girl fought him relentlessly, so he decided to throw her in a well to stop her from exposing him. He then returned home and joined in the search for her that lasted for 2 days until her body was found. Sanchez wasn't as smooth as he thought he was, so he got arrested the same day Ana's body was found. He was charged and sentenced to 40 years in prison, but was released after serving a little over 2 decades. On April 13, 2018, nearly 33 years later, Sanchez encountered Ana's father, Juan José Fernández, on a Granada street. And let's just say Fernández was not satisfied with the court's verdict. Fernández, who worked as a butcher at some point, seemed to have come back prepared because he pulled out a knife and attacked Sanchez. The police promptly intervened and took Sanchez to the hospital. It's unclear whether or not Fernández faced any charges. Eduardo Gallo. What you're about to hear sounds like the plot of a yet-to-be-released John Wick movie, but I guarantee you, Eduardo Gallo's actions are 100% real. It all started when Paula, Eduardo's 25-year-old daughter, was taken from her parents' weekend home in Morelos, Mexico. One minute, she was sipping drinks and kicking back, and the next, she was being whisked away by kidnappers. To secure his daughter's release, Gallo gave the kidnappers about $18,500 and some jewelry, but Paula never came back. Her body was found about a week later. She had been shot to death. The police investigation into the case yielded nothing, so Eduardo Gallo closed down his consulting firm and took matters into his own hands. He began investigating the case and looking into different possibilities, while the police just followed his leads and did the bare minimum. Gallo found lead after lead, and eventually the information he obtained from going over cell phone records led him straight to the gunman's location. Aided by the police, Gallo orchestrated the arrest of Francisco Zamora Arellano, the gunman who took the life of his daughter. Shortly after being taken into custody, Arellano confessed to shooting Paula. Texas father. When a Texas family gathered to have a barbecue at their ranch in Shiner, they could have never guessed how the night would end. The barbecue started out well enough, with 3 generations of the family present. Halfway through, a 5-year-old girl who was in attendance wandered away in the direction of the barn to feed the chickens. Because let's face it, would you rather hang with your family or feed adorable chickens? I know I would pick the chickens. Things didn't go as the little girl planned, and so, moments later, her 23-year-old father heard her scream. He rushed to the scene and witnessed her being assaulted by a 47-year-old man identified as Jesus Mora Flores. Immediately, the young man rushed to his daughter's rescue and then turned towards her attacker, hitting him repeatedly on the head. Now, this is where it gets dicey, because while some sources say Flores was an acquaintance of the family, known for his horse grooming abilities, others say he was a ranch hand, and some sources even report that he was a total stranger. Whether Flores was known to the family or was just a really weird creep who broke in, the one thing that's constant is by the time the young father reined in his anger and called 911, Flores was unconscious. Shortly after, he was pronounced dead. The town's sheriff at the time of the incident did not press charges against the father and had deferred the incident to a grand jury. He believed that the man had a right to defend his daughter even if it meant using deadly force. Consider this your sign to move to Texas. They apparently have really cool sheriffs. Jason Browning. In mid-2014, 18-year-old Raymond Fernández and Browning's 11-year-old son went up to the boys' room to play video games the way kids do. Fernández made sure to shut the door behind him, but Browning didn't think much of this because Fernández has been babysitting his son for more than 3 years. He was practically part of the family at this point. For some reason, Browning decided to head up to the room, and to his horror, he walked in on Fernández assaulting his son. Without thinking twice, Browning attacked Fernández and beat him to a pulp, literally. At one point, he headed to the kitchen to get a knife, but his son stopped him from following through with his plan to stab the babysitter who had turned out to be a predator. Upon further investigation, it was discovered that Fernández had been abusing the boy since he was only 8 years old. Browning's anger stemmed from not only being a father, but an abuse survivor himself. Subsequently, Fernández was taken to the hospital to receive treatment before being taken into custody. And Browning did not face any charges because police say he was simply acting like a dad. André Bamberski. 27 years after the crime, André Bamberski got justice for his daughter, even if it meant breaking several laws and starting an international conflict between 2 of the world's most powerful nations. In 1982, André's 14-year-old daughter, Kalinka Bamberski, was spending the summer with her mother and her very shady stepfather, Dieter Krombach, in Germany, when she passed away under suspicious circumstances. According to Krombach, he had given Kalinka a dose of cobalt ferlicite, a cobalt iron preparation he claimed was to help with tanning, before sending her to bed, only to find her dead the next morning. Later, Krombach changed his story and said the injection was to treat anemia. That's not suspicious at all. In addition to his inconsistent stories, the medical examiner also found a lot of signs on Kalinka's body that proved that A. Krombach was lying, and B. Kalinka had been abused. Despite the mounting evidence, the German legal system failed to hold Krombach accountable. When Bamberski realized he wouldn't get the justice he desired in Germany, he returned to his home country, France, and began working to have the case tried there. In Germany, Krombach continued to carry out more crimes against children, but he managed to get away with a slap on the wrist each time. As time passed, the window of time during which Krombach could be prosecuted for Kalinka's death was fast approaching, and Bamberski grew more frantic. In 2009, with just 3 years left before the window closed, Bamberski arranged to have a group of men beat Krombach up, kidnap him, and deliver him to French authorities. And that's exactly what they did. They even chained him to a fence near a police station for good measure. Bamberski was arrested for his crimes, but was released on bail. Krombach, on the other hand, was held in France and sentenced to 15 years imprisonment, despite Germany's requests for him to be sent back after the abduction. That's it for today. See ya.